Away from the Citadel podcast, hosted by Charlie Fawcett and Luke Helliwell.
Hello there, this is Away from the Citadel, hosted by me, Luke Helliwell, and today I'm joined by Charlie Fawcett. How are you doing today, Charlie?
I'm alright, mate. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. So coming up on today's podcast, we'll be discussing all things Farsley Celtic, including the ownership, the pitch, and their latest managerial announcement, former Leeds boss Neil Redfearn. We'll also be hearing the thoughts of Farsley Celtic fan David Pearce throughout today's episode. Let's start with the pitch issues. Farsley Celtic have been forced to play their home games in Buxton due to the pitch of the Citadel being barren due to neglect by owner Paul Barthorpe. We asked David how he has found being unable to support his side at home this season.
Well, one of the great pleasures of non-league football, obviously, is the social aspect of it, not just the footballing aspect of it. And obviously, Farsley fans have been denied that since last April, since football stopped at the Citadel when the ground redevelopment stalled there. So it's been a real mess for a lot of fans. The average gate at Farsley might only be about 500, but for the regular home fans, particularly, that pleasure, the social aspect of it, of having a ground, having your own club, having your own bar, meeting your own mates, having a beer every Saturday to follow the football. There's no doubt it gives you sort of not just social enjoyment, but a sense of sort of shared identity, a sense of belonging, you know, with a group of sort of like-minded people who over many years have become friends. So that's been a real loss, to not having been a home game there this season. Home games recently being played at Buxton. It's 70 miles away and the cost of going prohibitive. So the supporters club decided to initiate a boycott of games in Buxton in protest really against the cost and the owner's management of the club. But it's been a real loss being unable to support your home team at home.
So Charlie, a key issue that David's touched upon there is the social aspect of it. How tricky must it be not being able to go with your friends and family down to your home ground every fortnight?
Well, it's got to be heartbreaking on it because, well, for me and I'm assuming for you as well, supporting your football club isn't just about the results. It's about the making friends and the going to the games and just creating a community feeling. Especially in non-league football, that's such a big aspect of it. And having that stripped away, it's like Farsley Celtic is a shell of a club where you've got a team playing, but they're not playing at the home ground, they're not playing in front of the home fans, and it's almost not a real football club anymore.
So following on from the on-field issues, former Leeds boss Neil Redfearn has taken charge of Farsley in the past week, following Pav Singh's resignation. Here are the thoughts of David on the appointment of Redfearn.
Well, it was a real shock to fans when it was announced last week that Neil Redfearn, ex-Leeds United manager, would be the new manager at Farsley Celtic. I mean, Redfearn's one of the most instantly recognisable figures in football in Yorkshire. I think the guy's played over 1,000 recognised first-team games. He's managed all over the place. Halifax, York, I think, Scarborough, Leeds. In a caretaker capacity, admittedly, in a lot of places. But you can't fault the experience that guy is going to bring to Farsley. That goes without saying. I think the interesting thing will be is seeing how he fits in this particular non-league setting at Farsley. What a shock it will be stepping into a club with no pitch, a disintegrating ground, only away games, a very, very small squad, and being under a current National League embargo which prevents him bringing in any new players or players on loan, particularly facing as they do a relegation scrap. So you can't fault him for taking on a challenge. It's an absolutely enormous task that he's got in front of him and people respect him for that. Pav coming back is a bonus. Again, another unexpected bonus. He's very well thought of at Farsley, Pav. Very conscientious, a wonderful personality, a lot of humility, plus a lot of footballing experience. He knows a lot of the players in the local area. If the embargo's lifted, he might be able to bring people in. And with Redfearn, you never know, he might be able to just sort of stave off the threat of relegation. I doubt it, but we'll see.
So Charlie, Neil Redfearn has taken charge at Farsley Celtic. Got to be seen as a massive coup for the club. But is this his toughest challenge yet, and can he keep them in the National League North?
Oh, it's the biggest challenge of his career by far, but just Farsley managing to pull in Neil Redfearn shows that even though things look very bad for the club and it almost looks damning, at least, you know, they do still have the stature in Yorkshire football with such an iconic person like Neil Redfearn coming in to take over. Yes, it's a hard task. Will they stay up? I don't think so. Even Redfearn is probably too big of a task for him, but I think it's something to cheer about for the Farsley fans who haven't had much over the past year.
So behind all these issues is the owner, Paul Barthorpe, who took over the club in 2019. His first change at the club was changing the colours, and ever since the club has been in a downward spiral due to Barthorpe's poor ownership. Here are the thoughts of David on Paul Barthorpe.
Paul Barthorpe's been here for about 5-6 seasons, a couple of COVID seasons that were written off. So on a footballing aspect, his record at Farsley's been extremely disappointing. The 3 post-COVID seasons, Farsley finished 20th in each season, staying up remarkably in each season on the very last day because results elsewhere went for them. It couldn't have been closer. And this season, relegation looms. So from a footballing point of view, he's brought nothing of any benefit at all to Farsley. The club has struggled on the pitch and to maintain its National League North status ever since he came. And this season's been no different. This season worse, obviously, because of all the other associated problems at Farsley. From a managerial point of view, I would say his tenure's been disastrous. We're a club that's got no pitch. Players are only paid irregularly. There's been a player walkout virtually in the last month in protest against irregular payments and not being consulted on the move to Buxton. Backroom staff have walked out, the physios and the coaches. Even young bar staff at the club have been on strike in protest about not being paid. And again, if you look at Barthorpe's tenure and gauge it in terms of his relationship with fans, it couldn't have been more catastrophic. In November, the fans passed a no confidence vote in the owner, given his failure to put football on at the Citadel this season and to pay staff adequately. In the move to Buxton, there was no consultation with players or with supporters over that. As a result of that, the supporters club have been boycotting the Buxton games. Fans, when they've got the time or when they can afford it, will still go to legitimate away games, but there's a boycott of the Buxton games. So, in my opinion, his tenure at the club has been poor, worse than poor, probably disastrous.
So it's pretty safe to say Paul Barthorpe is very unpopular amongst Farsley Celtic fans. Charlie, is it time for him to sell up?
Well, he should do, and you can see why, because any football club in the country this happens to, there will be, if you're treating your fans like customers, you're treating a football club like any other company, it's only going to go one way, unfortunately.
Now, if these issues don't improve, the future is looking bleak for Farsley, with fans in desperation for change at the club. We asked David about how he thought the club could get out of trouble and how he thinks Farsley Celtic's future is looking.
I've not got a crystal ball on the table in front of me. I think there are a lot of sort of possible options with this. One option, of course, is that the owner gets the pitch work done. I don't think that'll happen this season, so there'll be no football at the Citadel this season. But if the new pitch is relayed and he manages to establish a sort of pitch hire, a sort of recreational business at the Citadel, he might be able to then afford to run a first team pitch out of the Citadel. It won't be in National League North. I imagine Farsley will be relegated this season, but hopefully if the pitch works are complete, it might be like a reset. Effectively the club will start again in the 25-26 season, probably in a lower league, but then we'll see what happens. Another option obviously would be that the pitch work isn't done, the club fails its National League ground gradings, which I think are done in March. They could be relegated if there is a league in fact that will take them without a pitch. So there's a bit of a doomsday scenario there. And then obviously there's one option is that the current owner sells. New buyers come in with sufficient money to complete the pitch works at the ground, to effect a fresh start at Farsley without any of the animosity that's been injected since Paul Barthorpe took over, and the club would move forward under new ownership. But again, probably in a lower league, and when the groundwork is done, who knows? We'll all have to wait and see, but it's a very, very troubled future. And what will happen in the near future? Well, I don't think there'll be a game at the Citadel this season. What happens at the start of the next season is anybody's guess.
Charlie, the future of Farsley Celtic looks bleak. David, not confident. What do you think the future holds for Farsley Celtic?
Well, I think in a dream world, obviously, you want to stay up in National League North and get the pitch sorted over close season. But I think the most likely outcome is probably that the team are relegated, potentially go into liquidation, but hopefully manage to get some games played and hopefully get the pitch sorted. But it feels like that nothing's going to happen with the stadium, to be honest. And if they're still playing at Buxton, it's a complete disaster.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I can't see anything but relegation for Farsley Celtic.
Well, in terms of the future for Farsley, you've had a statement from Paul Barthorpe this morning saying that Farsley get a gate receipt lower than clubs that play on parks. And to that I say, well, that's what happens when you don't do any work on the ground and you have a team playing in a different county. Like, it's a completely different comparison, and it kind of just sums up his ownership at Farsley as a whole. I mean, in terms of the team's success, they've got a massive game to come on Tuesday evening at home. Well, I say at home, in Buxton against Marine. Marine, of course, bottom of the league. If Farsley were to win that, they give themselves a bit of hope of staying up, but it does feel very, very damning. And I think relegation is probably imminent, but for a club that don't even have a pitch, I think that's probably the least of the worries.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today on today's episode. We'd like to express our thanks to David Pearce for providing us with his thoughts on the situation at the Citadel, and we hope he is able to return to watching his side at home in the near future. Come back next time for another episode of Away from the Citadel.
Away from the Citadel podcast, hosted by Charlie Fawcett and Luke Helliwell.